The first time I heard it, I dismissed it as a trick of the ear. The kind of auditory ghost that flees through the hum of a busy coffee shop. The barista, a young woman with a constellation of piercings and tired eyes, slid my latte across the counter. "Glimmerfall," she said with a practiced smile. I paused, my fingers hovering over the warm ceramic. The word was clear, crystalline, like a tiny bell ringing in the back of my skull. It sounded like nothing I had ever heard, a nonsensical fusion of syllables. "Sorry, what was that?" I asked. Her smile faltered, a flicker of confusion in her eyes. I said, "Enjoy your coffee." "Right, thanks." I took the cup, a flush of embarrassment warming my neck. My friend, Elias, was already at our table by the window, scrolling through his phone. "What took you so long?" he asked without looking up. "Thought the barista said something weird," I mumbled, setting my cup down. The foam art was a lopsided leaf. She said "Glimmerfall" instead of "enjoy" or whatever. Elias finally looked at me, a slight frown on his face. "She did say Glimmerfall. What's weird about that?" He gave a small shrug and returned to his phone. "Glimmerfall to you, too, man." I stared at him, the words set in the air between us, alien and yet utterly mundane to him. I teased the metal on my tongue. "What does that even mean?" "What does what mean?" he asked, his attention still glued to the screen. "It's just, a word means what it means." I didn't press it. To do so would be to admit a fundamental disconnect I couldn't yet articulate. I drank my coffee, but the warmth didn't reach the cold knot forming in my stomach. It was a mishearing, it had to be. Elias was probably just messing with me, picking up on my confusion and running with it. He had a dry, often cruel sense of humor. That was the most logical explanation. But a few days later, I heard it again. A news anchor on the television, reporting on a devastating flood in a coastal town, finished her segment with a somber look. Her face was a mask of professional sympathy. "Our thoughts are with the families affected," she said, her voice grave. "Glimmerfall." The word was a quiet, respectful whisper. It didn't fit. It felt like a glitch in the broadcast. A stray syllable from another language bleeding through. I rewound the live broadcast, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I played it again. This time, she simply said, "Good night." I felt a wave of vertigo. Was I manufacturing it, inserting this phantom word into the mouths of strangers? I spent the next hour replaying the clip, over and over. "Good night. Glimmerfall. Good night. Glimmerfall." The two words flickered back and forth in my perception. Like one of those optical illusions, a vase that is also two faces. The more I focused, the less certain I became of what was real. The incidents grew more frequent, the anomaly weaving itself into the fabric of my days. A postman delivering a package, Glimmerfall. A child laughing in the park as he fed the pigeons, Glimmerfall. A recorded message on the subway, announcing the next stop. The next station is Elm Street, Glimmerfall. Each time, the word was perfectly intonated for its context. The postman's was a cheerful sign-off. The child's was a shout of pure joy. The subway's was toneless, automated. And each time, no one else reacted. Life simply continued, flowing around me as if I were a rock in a stream, the only one noticing the strange new current. I tried to be a scientist about it. I started carrying a small digital recorder. My theory was simple. If I could capture the word, I would have proof. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. The first time I succeeded or so I thought was during a team meeting at the architecture firm where I worked. My boss, Mr. Henderson, was wrapping up a presentation on a new municipal project. And with this streamlined approach, we should be able to deliver the preliminary designs well ahead of schedule. He concluded, beaming at the team. Excellent work, everyone at Glimmerfall. A murmur of assent went through the room. I felt the familiar cold pinprick on my neck. My thumb, slick with sweat, had been holding down the record button on the device in my pocket. Later that evening, in the stark silence of my apartment, I played it back. My breath hitched. Mr. Henderson's voice came through, clear and distinct. We should be able to deliver the preliminary designs well ahead of schedule. That's all for today. I played it again and again. The word wasn't there. It had been replaced by a perfectly normal, contextually appropriate phrase. I threw the recorder across the room, where it clattered against the wall and fell silent. The silence it left behind was worse than any noise. It was empty, accusatory. The problem wasn't in the world, it was in me. My work began to suffer. I'd stare at blueprints, the clean, precise lines of buildings blurring into meaningless squiggles. The curve of a proposed atrium would suddenly seem to whisper the phantom word. The shadows cast by the scale models in the office felt longer, deeper, as if they were hiding something just at the edge of my vision. I became withdrawn, jumpy. My conversations were stilted, as I was constantly bracing myself to hear it, to have my fragile sense of reality perforated once more. Elias grew concerned. You look like hell, Alex, he told me over a beer one night. The bar was loud, a cacophony of music and laughter that grated on my nerves. You're not sleeping, you're barely eating, what's going on? I decided to risk it. I had to tell someone. It's the word, I said, my voice low. The one from the coffee shop. I'm hearing it everywhere, but it's not real. When I record it, it's not there. It's like my brain is inserting it. Elias's expression was unreadable. He took a long sip of his beer. What word? Glimmerfall, I whispered, the sound of it on my own tongue feeling like a betrayal. He stared at me for a long moment, his brow furrowed. Right, Glimmerfall. He said it so easily. And you think hearing it is a problem? Don't you see, it's not a real word, it doesn't exist. I've searched every dictionary, every linguistic database, every corner of the internet. It's not slang, it's not a meme, it's nothing. But people understand it, Elias said, as if explaining something simple to a child. You understand what it means in context, right? When the barista says it, it's a pleasantry. When the news anchor says it about a tragedy, it's commiseration. It's a word, it does what words do. No. I slammed my hand on the table, rattling our glasses. It's a placeholder for other, real words. My brain is swapping them out. Enjoy your coffee becomes Glimmerfall. Good night becomes Glimmerfall. That's all for today becomes Glimmerfall. I'm the only one it's happening to. Elias leaned back, a look of genuine alarm on his face. Alex, maybe you need to talk to someone, a doctor. So you think I'm crazy? I think you're fixating on something that doesn't matter. It's just a word, so what if it's new? Languages evolve. This isn't evolution, it's an infection, a ghost in the machine. My voice was rising, attracting stares from a nearby table. You're not listening to me, you're not trying to understand. What's there to understand? He shot back, his patience finally snapping. You're obsessed with a sound, it's like being angry at the color blue, just let it go. He stood up, throwing a few bills on the table. I have to go look. Just get some sleep, okay, Glimmerfall. He walked away, leaving me alone with the echo of that impossible word. He had used it to mean take care, or feel better. But to me, it was a dismissal, a final seal on my isolation. My world shrank. I began to avoid people, to fear conversation. I worked from home, citing a fabricated illness. My apartment became my sanctuary and my prison. The silence I cultivated was a thin defense. The word would still find me. It would slip from the mouth of an actor in an old movie. It would be there in the lyrics of a song I heard 1,000 times, suddenly change. The patterns of cracks on my ceiling started to look like its syllables, written in a language of decay. The way the evening light slanted through the blinds seemed to cast a shadow that held its shape. One afternoon, desperate for fresh air, I went to a small, forgotten park at the edge of the city. I sat on a bench, watching the wind stir the fallen leaves. An old woman, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, sat down at the other end of the bench. She was humming to herself, a tuneless, reedy sound. For a while, we sat in shared silence. Then, she turned to me. Her eyes were milky with cataracts, but they seemed to look right through me. You hear it too, don't you, boy? She rasped. My blood ran cold. Hear what? The empty word, she said, her voice a dry rustle. The pretty sound that means nothing. I could barely breathe. Glimmerfall. She nodded slowly, a strange, grim satisfaction on her face. That's the one, a new name for an old silence. It's a husk, you see, a placeholder. Pretty, isn't it? Much prettier than what it's covering up. What is it covering up? I asked, my voice trembling. The gaps, she said, looking up at the sky. The space between the notes, the breath before the scream. The quiet when the story ends, it's always been there. But people can't bear the emptiness, so they filled it. They wove a patch over the hole, a word for the void. She smiled, a terrifying, toothless expression. But you and I, our stitching has come undone, we see the hole. And we hear the patch they've put over it. She patted my hand with a hand that felt like bundled twigs. Don't try to catch it, don't try to show it to them. They can't see the hole, so the patch is invisible too. It's part of the tapestry for them. For us, she trailed off, her gaze distant. For us, it's a reminder of the chair. She stood up, her joints creaking. Glimmerfall, boy, she said, and the word was imbued with a terrible, ancient sadness. She shuffled away, leaving me frozen on the bench. Her words didn't comfort me, they terrified me. The idea that this wasn't a simple neurological tic, but a glimpse into a fundamental truth about reality, it was too much. The world was a tapestry with a hole in it, and I was one of the few cursed to see the crude patch. I had to know for sure. I needed science, data, something concrete. I couldn't trust my own ears, my own mind. I made an appointment with a renowned audiologist and neurologist, the Dr. Aris I found through a frantic late-night search. I didn't tell her about the word. I couldn't. She would think I was psychotic. Instead, I told her I was experiencing auditory pareidolia. Hearing phantom sounds, music, and voices in ambient noise. It was close enough to the truth. Dr. Aris was a calm, methodical woman. She subjected me to a battery of tests. I sat in soundproof booths, listening to tones of varying frequencies. She mapped my brain's electrical activity with an EEG while playing different sounds. Days turned into a week of appointments. I felt like a specimen under a microscope, my very perception being dissected and analyzed. Finally, She called me into her office to discuss the results. The room was sterile, smelling of antiseptic. My charts and brain scans were displayed on a large monitor. "Well, Mr. Thorne," she began, her tone neutral. "Your hearing is, mechanically speaking, perfect, better than average. In fact, there are no tumors, no signs of epilepsy, no physiological damage that would explain your symptoms." My heart sank. "So it's psychological." "Not necessarily," she said, tapping a finger on a complex, multicolor image in my brain scan. "We found something, an anomaly. It's in your auditory cortex, specifically in the region responsible for language processing, Wernicke's area." She zoomed in on the image. A small portion was colored a deep, angry red, while the rest of the area was a cool blue. "We ran a complex frequency analysis," she continued, her voice tinged with academic excitement. "When one introduces a specific, very complex sonic frequency, not a word, not music, but a precise band of modulated white noise, this area of your brain fails to process it correctly. It's a phenomenon we're only just beginning to understand. We're calling it acoustic signal agnosia." "What does that mean?" I asked, leaning forward. "It means your brain can perceive a specific sound. A sound that is, for all intents and purposes, a component of nearly all ambient noise. Think of it like a specific shade of the color blue that you suddenly became blind to. For everyone else, that blue is still there, an integral part of the sky. For you, the sky has a hole in it. Your brain, in its attempt to make sense of this new nothing, this sensory void, creates a phantom to fill the space, an auditory hallucination, a placeholder." The old woman's word echoed in my head. "A placeholder, a patch over the hole." Deeper Yaris went on, oblivious to my internal crisis. "This phantom sound will be consistent. Your brain has created it, so it will always be the same. And because it's filling a gap in common ambient frequencies, you'll hear it everywhere. In speech, in music, in the wind." A dizzying, terrifying realization began to dawn. The world wasn't broken, I was. The plot twist of my life wasn't that some alien word was invading reality. It was that I had lost the ability to perceive a part of reality that was fundamental to everyone else. My carefully constructed paranoia crumbled, replaced by a horror far colder and more profound. The liars hadn't been mocking me. The barista, the news anchor, my boss, they weren't part of a conspiracy. They were normal, I was the aberration. "This frequency," I said, my voice hoarse. "This sound I can't process, what is it? What are other people hearing when I hear my placeholder?" Deeper Yaris looked at me, a flicker of something unreadable in her professional gaze. It was a look I had seen before, in Elias's eyes in the bar. It was pity, it was fear. The fear of the healthy for the sick. "That's the crux of it, Mr. Thorne. It's not something I can describe. How do you describe the color blue to a person born blind? It's not a word in the traditional sense. It's a foundational layer of communication. A subharmonic carrier wave for intent, for meaning. It's the sound of shared consciousness. It's what separates language from mere noise. It's the hum of humanity." The logic of it was a perfect, beautiful, soul-shattering cage. I wasn't hearing a word that didn't exist. I was the only person who was no longer hearing a word that had always existed. A concept so integral to human perception that it didn't even have a name. It was just there, like air, and I had forgotten how to breathe it. My brain, in its desperation to fill the sudden, terrifying silence where the hum of humanity used to be, had invented a replacement. It had created a single, beautiful, meaningless word to stand in for everything I had lost. Glimmerfall, I whispered. The word felt different now, not alien, just lonely. It was my word, mine alone, a monument to my own exile. Dear Eris gave me a sad, clinical smile. The brain is a remarkable organ. It will do anything to protect itself from the void. I stood up, my legs feeling unsteady. The room seemed too bright, the air too thin. I was an outsider looking in, forever separated from the rest of my species by a single, silent frequency. They were all together in a warm, resonant room. And I was outside, my face pressed against the cold glass, hearing only a distorted echo. Is there a cure? I asked, though I already knew the answer. We don't know what caused it, Mr. Thorne. It's as if a wire in your head has been cut. We don't know how to reconnect it. I walked out of the clinic and into the late afternoon. The city noise was a symphony of alienation. Cars passed, people talked and laughed on their phones, music spilled from a storefront. But I knew now what was truly happening. Beneath the audible sounds, woven through them like a golden thread, was the frequency I could no longer hear. The hum of connection, the sound of shared reality. And in its place, my brain dutifully, tragically, filled the silence. A mother passed by, pushing a stroller. She looked down at her baby and smiled, her mouth moving. I didn't hear sweetheart or my love. I heard the clear, bell-like tone of my personal ghost. Glimmerfall, she said. And I knew then what the old woman meant. The word was a patch, a beautiful, intricate, and utterly lonely patch over a hole in my soul. A hole shaped exactly like the rest of the human race. I looked up at the sky, at the people walking past, at the entire world going on without me. They were all bathed in a sound I would never hear again. They were all connected by a thread I could no longer grasp. I was alone, adrift in a sea of static that only I could hear. The horror wasn't that I was hearing a phantom word. The horror was that I was finally hearing the silence. The true and terrifying silence that the word was created to hide. And as I stood there, the sounds of the city began to fade, replaced by a low hiss, like a radio tuned between stations. The raw, unfiltered static of the void. And woven through it, a desperate, lovely, and heartbreaking like Glimmerfall.